This podcast is presented by the Prince George's County Memorial Library System.
Hi, I'm Hawa.
Oh, are you doing special guest or are you doing it with
No,
us?
I'll do it. I just didn't know what order.
Okay. That way, I guess.
Okay. Hi, I'm Hawa. I'm Kelsey.
I'm Heather.
And this is our podcast, These Books Made Me. Today we're diving into Anne M. Martin's series, The Babysitter's Club. Much like our American Girl episodes, there's simply too many books to tackle the whole series at once. So we'll be kicking things off with the first two Kristy novels. Friendly warning as always, this podcast contains spoilers. If you don't yet know who lives with a ghost, proceed with caution. We have a special guest today. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica St. Sume, librarian by day and entrepreneur by trade. So, was this everybody's first time reading these books?
I believe this was my first time reading these books. I remember seeing the books around a lot, and I may have read some of them, but I don't know if it was these. So I'm going to just say yeah, because I didn't remember anything.
This was definitely not my first time reading them. I have been pushing for our podcast to cover the Babysitter's Club since we started it. Also, by the way, I'm back. I'm so excited to be back.
Yay!
My brief and faded return. So this was not my first time reading them. I was an avid Babysitter's Club collector growing up. I loved them. My dad and I would go to thrift stores around Philadelphia and see how many 10-cent, I think they were a dime at the time, I don't know, inflation, copies I could get. And they're still being hoarded in my parents' basement, although I am buying a house right now. And my dream is to create a Babysitter's Club wall with all my books. So that's exciting. Not my first time.
Why are you so cool?
Thank you. Not my first time, but it was really good to reread. And for me, I really felt like they held up compared to some other trade paperback or kid chapter books. I felt like they had a lot more depth and nuance to them than some of the other ones we've reread. So I really enjoyed my reread and I'm excited to talk about it.
Also, not my first time reading these. Like Kelsey, I read these all when I was small. My friends read them too. My friend Tessa and I made a lot of really terrible looking jewelry as an homage to Claudia, or I guess we were more inspired by Claudia and her constantly painting on her clothes and various things. So we made a lot of jewelry out of poster board and acrylic paints that we stuck to earring backs that, was very geometric. So it inspired that. And then we sold them. So we did have some entrepreneurship was also rubbing off on us from the books as well. So it was interesting to revisit. I do think that the characters mostly, at least the main girls, I think were pretty well drawn. You can see why everybody identified with a specific babysitter in the club. Yeah. And really the things that didn't hold up as well were more just product of the time, like inflation.
There's only one cause for inflation.
Yeah. Other than that, though, there's not a lot in them to specifically date them in any way. It's, very generic sort of experience of being that age, I think.
I feel like the story really resonated. And when I was reading the first chapter, I was like, hold on, 7th grade, that was around the time that I really got serious and into entrepreneurship and things of that nature. So I really related to the book. Oh, this reminds me of when I was younger, had a little bit of responsibilities, didn't have much to think about. So I would definitely say I remembered it.
We'll talk more in depth about the books, but first let's get a little bit of a history of the author. So Anne Matthews Martin, I always wondered what that middle M stood for, was born in 1955 in Princeton, New Jersey. Her mother, Edith, taught preschool while her father worked as an illustrator and cartoonist for several prominent magazines. Martin credits her babysitting exploits with her childhood best friend, Beth, for the ideas and characters in the Babysitter's Club. In her letters to young readers on Scholastic's website, she states Beth was the model for Kristy, while she was the model for Mary Ann, as she was a shy, quiet, and conscientious girl. She was encouraged to write by an elementary school teacher, but initially decided to pursue work as a teacher due to her love of children. She attended Smith College, studying education and child psychology, graduating in 1977. Martin credits her time in the all-women's environment of Smith for her formative years as a feminist. Her first job post-grad was at an elementary school in Connecticut, teaching a mixed 4th and 5th grade special education class. She only spent 1 year in the classroom before shifting to the children's publishing world, finding work as an editor. While working for Scholastic, Another editor, Jean Feiwel, floated the idea for a series of children's books about babysitting. Martin took the idea and ran with it, and the Babysitters Club series was born. Martin penned the first 35 books of the series before Scholastic turned it over to ghostwriters. She's primarily focused on one-off novels since then, winning a Newbery Honor for her book A Corner of the Universe in 2002. Martin has stayed busy outside of writing as well, founding the Lisa Libraries in 1990, an organization that provides children's books and support to libraries in underserved communities. She also created an eponymous foundation that same year, which focuses on literacy and arts programs and the care of stray and abused animals. In 2000, the Babysitters Club series ended with some 300 titles and almost 200 million copies in print. That same year, she teamed up with Canadian author Lara Godwin and illustrator Brian Selznick to write the 4-book Doll People series. Godwin was also Martin's longtime partner at the time they wrote the Doll People series, although they have since split. Martin, a self-avowed shy person, maintains a quiet, private life with her many pets. She has had multiple dogs and fostered hundreds of kittens. She currently resides in Shokan, a small town near Woodstock, New York, and recently wore a different hat as a producer for Netflix on their Babysitters Club series.
You didn't make fun of me for basing it all on the Babysitters Club.
We lead off with Kristy's great idea, book 1 of the absolutely massive series of Babysitters Club books. Kristy Thomas is a tomboyish and impulsive 12-year-old girl who is small for her age. She lives in Stony Brook, Connecticut, with her 2 older brothers, Charlie and Sam, her 6-year-old brother, David Michael, and her mom. Kristy's father divorced her mom, left the state, and remarried, all while offering minimal child support and sporadic contact at best with his kids. Listener, we will learn literally nothing redeeming about Kristy's dad in this book. He's awful.
The worst in the world.
Anyways, Kristy and her best friend, the shy and rather anxious Marianne, and their across-the-street neighbor, quirky and artsy Claudia, frequently babysit for neighbors. Kristy is a budding entrepreneur and forms the Babysitters Club.
Hi, we're the Babysitters Club.
With Marianne, Claudia, and the new girl from New York, Stacy. It's a quasi-conglomerate cum child labor union. We observe the girls' adventures in babysitting via their first-person accounts and notebook entries and lengthier explanations from Kristy's point of view. Everyone has different handwriting, and Stacy makes hearts over her eyes. Kristy's first clients turn out to be literal dogs. Claudia is inserted into a family feud, and Stacy falls for Kristy's brother, Sam. Marianne does some undercover espionage at Kristy's mother's millionaire boyfriend, Watson's home by sitting for his 2 kids. She learns absolutely nothing nefarious, nor anything to justify Kristy's pretty abominable treatment of the poor guy. To Kristy's horror, Watson proposes. And she has to babysit his kids during an emergency, and discovers she really likes them. The 4 girls have a big blow-up sort of vaguely related to secrets Stacy has been keeping. Shocker, she's diabetic.
Diabetes.
And we find out that Stacy's mom made them relocate to Stony Brook because she didn't want people to know about Stacy's diabetes.
Diabetes.
But in another shocker, none of the girls shunned Stacy for being diabetic, which apparently happened at her old school. Kristy's mom agrees to marry Watson, and Kristy gets on board with the marriage because she's genuinely fond of Watson's kids now.
And I even did your suggested reading of Kristy's Big Day.
The second book we are covering today is Kristy's Big Day. Kristy's Big Day picks up after new to Connecticut California girl Dawn has joined the Babysitters Club. Kristy's mom and Watson are preparing for their upcoming nuptials when life and an acrimonious divorce throw them a curveball. The Thomases' home has sold lickety-split instead of taking months to sell as anticipated, and Miss Thomas's work is sending her to Europe during the penciled-in date for the fall wedding. 2 adult divorcees with 6 kids between them couldn't possibly cohabitate before marriage, so looks like the wedding's in 2 weeks, kids. Kristy is initially pretty upset, but Mom asked her to be the bridesmaid, so she's on board with the Quickie Mansion backyard wedding. Of course, throwing a wedding together in 2 weeks is stressful, even for millionaires. Who will make the canapes and hors d'oeuvres? What will they do with the 14 children of relatives that need watching the week before the wedding, so said relatives can make hors d'oeuvres? Have no fear, the Babysitters Club is here. Kristy enlists all 5 club members to host what essentially is a week-long summer camp for 14 children under 10. Chaos ensues and is more or less managed, though we learn that cousin Emma is kind of a problem, and Watson's daughter Karen is the fox molder of Stony Brook. Kristy frets about what present to give her mom and stepdad, and the club members make bank for their week of work. The wedding comes together mostly hitch-free, save for an interruption by a witch and Karen biting her father. Kristy decides to gift her mom and Watson a handmade family tree showing the now combined families.
You write great plot summaries.
All right, so let's dive in on a little discussion. I think we will end up kind of talking about both of the books together because we're all bad at remembering how details break down. So we always like to start off with the question, how did it hold up? These books were written first in the 80s, so a lot has changed. Do we feel like they still read relevant for a modern audience?
I think they do. If I didn't know that this was a book that was written in the 80s, I wouldn't have thought, oh, this feels like super dated. I feel like books that are written before like the technology that we have now have more of that advantage because there's no reference. There's not as many references to things that feel super outdated.
Yeah, the only like dated things would be that they choose Claudia's room to hold the meetings because she's the only one with a phone. And it's a landline. But yeah, most of this stuff holds up pretty well. There are some issues where I wasn't sure if the version I was reading had maybe done an adjustment to make it not seem like a real problem for child labor. But when they host the camp, they end up making $225 for the week each. That's like way, way more than what minimum wage would have been in the 80s. They really did make bank.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that was actually how much they made in the original book or if that was adjusted so it didn't seem like super off-putting to readers for this edition. Because yeah, I put it into the like inflation calculator. If you went by what they made according to the book, that would be like over $500 for the week now, which is pretty good money. So then I started thinking maybe they adjusted it so that it didn't sound like all of these rich people were scamming these little girls. I don't know.
I mean, maybe, but I think even when I was 12, I would have been like $200. Oh my God. Like that would have felt like a lot of money to me.
Well, but it was. That's what I'm saying is like, I think that's more than they possibly could have made in the 80s when minimum wage was $3 and something an hour.
Which is wild because they were saying like, you know, after when they were trying to have the pizza party, one of the things they were saying was like, yeah, I got $3 for my 4 hours of babysitting.
Right. So like, yeah, the adjustment seemed like maybe that was a new addition, like, oh, we'll make this sound less horrible, that like maybe the original had it as less. Yeah. They got paid really well. But then again, Watson's a millionaire. So
okay, and what does Watson do? That's what I was wondering.
Great question. Who knows?
I really want to know what his job is. But yeah, I think the landline to me is the biggest thing that stands out because like the whole premise of the club that they have to meet at a certain time so people know how to call them, like they would just have an email form now or something, or like an online calendar where you could book a babysitter. So obviously that's a little dated, but that's also the central theme of the book. Yeah. So you have to keep that. And I feel like they should have been giving Claudia's parents money to subsidize the landline since they were using it for
business purposes. Maybe Claudia's parents were like writing it off on their taxes, though.
Yeah.
It's like a business expense.
But in terms of like the things we talk about with some of our other books about different issues that we might talk about differently today, that's something I really appreciate and respect about this book is I feel like they were very unafraid to talk about difficult things and really honestly and really openly, having divorced parents, having, you know, difficult family dynamics. When they think Stacy is dieting because she's anorexic, not because she's
that did not hold up too well to me either, because like I really am skeptical that a child was bullied out of a city for being diabetic.
Diabetes.
Which is how the book presents it.
Yeah.
Like, was there a huge stigma about
diabetes,
juvenile diabetes at some point? Because I don't remember that when I was a kid. But
how would they know?
She says that she fainted.
Okay.
But then she told them she was diabetic.
Diabetes.
And then she got bullied so much that they moved. And the like way she presented it was they were going to keep it she and her mom are keeping it a secret here so that doesn't happen again. I don't know if she was trying to like sync this to like what was going on with like the Ryan White AIDS moment of the time, but she was like afraid to touch that, so she made it diabetes.
Diabetes.
But then I feel like that doesn't really make sense because who bullies someone about being diabetic?
But even like the Babysitters Club kids say that they're like, that's not a problem. Like, why are you?
Right.
So I read it as like the way that kids will bully peers about anything that's different, right? Like they just decided she fainted and that was a big deal and everyone's gossiped and spread the story. And so then it just became her thing and it would have been whatever it was.
But they left the city over it.
But yeah, that was a dramatic response. Like send her to private school. Like you don't have to move city.
Right now we have more, information on health. People are more aware. There are more kids who have diabetes. So it's like, it kind of tells the times as well.
Yeah, but I do think kids still bully each other. Like, I think if that happened today, like, I think kids might pick on Stacey for that.
But more than for her being anorexic, like, that just seemed like a really weird trade-off, is that she and her mom were going to hide this thing and conceal it to the point that people thought she was anorexic.
It was poorly thought out.
That doesn't seem like a better thing than diabetes in terms of people like giving you a hard time about it. But
yeah. I wonder if it was like a personal situation or somebody experienced it and they kind of like wrote it in, because that is kind of random in a sense.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what I was thinking.
I don't know.
But then also, like, I'm over here like trying to Google and trying to see what other people may think and see if anything comes up. And the only thing that really kind of comes up, but this is more so in the Netflix series, it shows that, she has a continuous glucose monitor that she kind of blings out, I guess, in the series.
Because that didn't exist then.
Oh, well, damn. I knew you were going to say that, too.
Yeah, I mean, she would have
fancy.
had to be leaving to check her blood sugar. She would have been going to the nurse probably quite frequently.
Which would make her stand out from the other kids.
Right. But then, like, they're not going to tell them why she's doing that. And they're just going to let them think she's leaving to go, like, vomit in the bathroom or something.
I don't know.
It's a very odd, I don't know. I didn't think that was good parenting
Not great
by her
parenting.
mother.
Yeah. Which is a theme in these books, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
She starts off the first book like, yeah, my daddy don't pay child support.
I know. So we've been told Kristy's dad,
How come you don't want me, man?
just noped out of there across the country, hasn't really been sending money.
Who needs
And she's
him?
like, well, I have to give him half the money from the house.
I
And
was
it's
mad.
like, ma'am, please. If he hasn't been paying child support, you're not giving him any money from
You
this
won't
house.
even know.
The court is not going to do that.
Today's session of divorce court.
Would they have done that in the 80s?
I mean, maybe.
I don't know.
Divorce is different back then, I think.
I think it probably was too, but like that was shocking to me. It's like, nah, he's on the hook for all this like unpaid child support. You aren't giving him a dime.
I'm gonna get through college without him. I'm gonna get a great job without him.
Use that house money for whatever you want.
Yeah.
Also, she's marrying a millionaire.
Right. And then, I thought it was interesting seeing Kristy talk about how, like, what was she saying? She was saying something along the lines of, like, she didn't know what would be acceptable to ask Watson for. Like, is it okay to ask him for a few bucks or, like, a big screen TV? She's like, those are two different things, I can't expect him to pay my college tuition. I'm just like, but, it felt like a really, like, real conversation.
It
that she
did
would
with her
have.
brothers.
Yeah.
I found that really relatable for Kristy to be so young and so aware of her family's finances and how decisions that she makes affects the finances, how her mom struggles to make ends meet, and then not knowing how this new situation will impact. That felt very real to me as a kid who was also very stressed about that growing up and very aware of that. It sounds like we feel like that generally it held up pretty well, which is good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think the range of parenting was really interesting, like seeing all the different ways that the parents did or did not provide support and guidance. You have everything from the absent father to, especially fatherhood, I feel like is represented in so many different ways. You have all their different dads play a role in some capacity and how they react to that and what they like and don't like about that support was really interesting.
Which I think is pretty cool because I feel like a lot of the times in books or just in media in general, you know a lot about the moms, but you don't hear as much about like the dads. So it was kind of cool to hear about Watson as a dad and to hear like the roles that the dads play in parenting as well as the moms. I don't know if that was intentional on her part, but I think she did a good job with that.
Yeah, and the non-roles because Stacey's dad is absentee, right? Like we never hear anything about her dad. And I think Dawn's dad is dead. Is that right?
I think that
no, Mary Ann's mom is dead. Dawn's mom is divorced, but
there's a lot of divorce.
They get together.
Yeah.
Dawn's mom and Mary Ann's dad end up like reuniting. They were like high school sweethearts or something.
Oh, see that I didn't know. That's cute.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, spoilers.
Spoilers for the 30-year-old book.
Yeah, the beginning.
I don't know. They're very involved in their parents' lives in a way that is kind of interesting.
But I think that like you would be too, like especially, and I think it's kind of brave of these books in the 80s. We have two books that like spend a lot of time on Kristy's mom's dating life.
Yeah.
Which, that's cool.
How did she find a millionaire, first of all? Drop the
That's
tip,
what I
sis.
want to know. Where did she turn up this man? She is a single mother of 4 kids, working her butt off, and somehow she finds some millionaire man.
Speaking of working her butt off, I don't know if this is jumping ahead too much,
And
but
I even did your suggested reading of Kristy's Big Day.
it's crazy that the whole plot of the Kristy's Big Day is basically based off of the fact they had to rush this wedding because her job was like, yeah, you got to take a 2-week trip. I would have been like, excuse me, I'm getting married. Well, and especially she's about to marry a millionaire, right? So like, if you got to be like, forget that job.
But like, really, the reason they're rushing it is because
They don't want to live
they don't
together.
want to live together before they're married, which again is just a really weird take to me because like you got 6 kids between you.
Maybe
like nobody thinks this is a white wedding.
White wedding.
Right? I don't.
it's a yellow wedding.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's actually like something else that's a little dated maybe. And I think today that might not have been as relatable of a plot point.
Yeah, and I was wondering too if that played in with the divorce thing in the house sale, is that like she didn't want to move in with the dude because Kristy's dad would like use that against her in court or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much of that was coming from a place of fear. Like that came through to me, at least from reading it, was that like Kristy's mom was weirdly fearful of the dad messing things up somehow.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting just because like, granted, I could feel you if you were just like, yeah, I don't want to live together before we get married. But then, like, if something catastrophic happens that totally throws a wrench in our wedding plans, I would just be like, we're moving in for these a couple weeks until we get married.
They could live in a different wing of the mansion. They're talking about like, oh, well, I have a bedroom on the 2nd floor or the 3rd floor. It's a massive house.
I thought they were going to say all those family members were going to stay in the house for a second.
Yeah, I was a little stressed about that.
Yeah. Or like he could just pay to like let them sublet somewhere or something. Yeah, that seemed odd to me, but again, probably just a product of the time. Like I don't think now people would be as freaked out about like 2 40-something people with a gaggle of children cohabitating, but I don't know.
A gaggle.
I didn't kind of think about like the father in that instance. I was thinking about like what example the mother wanted to, set for the children, especially since like the children are so involved in what their parents are doing and they're watching and they see everything. So I was kind of thinking like she was trying to set an example for the children in their lives.
But he had a mansion. They could have just stayed in separate bedrooms or something. Like
maybe it's about like making them feel like a family when they move in together, set them on the right foot. I don't know.
Speaking of family, am I jumping around if I mention this family tree?
No, hit it.
I don't know if y'all book had, I don't know if yours had it, Kelsey, but like the book has like a picture of the family tree.
Mine didn't because I got an ebook for the second one.
Me too.
And I didn't get a tree.
Her family tree didn't make no sense, but...
What does it say?
Like, where is it?
I also didn't quite understand why the 2 of them cutting the cake together made her think of a family tree, but that was nice.
Okay, so the family tree, I'm going to describe it for y'all that are listening. It has Karen, Andrew... Oh, okay, I lied. I was going to say the kids are missing, the other siblings are missing from the family tree, but they are on here. But it still kind of don't really make a lot of sense. But I guess like the Watson and Elizabeth are the parents. They're like in the middle. Elizabeth's kids are underneath her and Karen's kids are over top of her. See, my issue was going to be that the step siblings were on there, but I didn't see that at first.
She made it more like a family hourglass than a tree.
It's a family spider web.
Yeah, it's confusing when you look at it, but the thought was there, right? So the vision was there. My issue was more so that she didn't put the other kids on there, but they are on there. So, I mean, it's not like you would expect the parents who aren't in the house to be on there. So
they're not part of the family.
My bad, Kristy.
Yeah.
You was doing something there. They'll appreciate it.
Yeah, I like that Kristy got them a family tree and David Michael got them a goldfish. Was it, and I wanted to know, was it goldfish crackers or was it a literal goldfish?
That wasn't clear to me
his
either.
Thought process behind that? Like, I was like, but a lot of the things they mentioned in this book, they don't really give like further insight. And I'm kind of okay with that. Not everything needed to be over explained. Like, it was just a cute thought, from a little 7-year-old. And
it's goldfish.
I think the whole thought process of what do you give someone who has everything or can afford everything was kind of cute.
Mm-hmm.
I will say David Michael is the same age as Karen, right? They're both 6-ish.
Karen seems
she
more childish.
A lot more advanced.
Really?
Than
You think
him.
so?
She's out there naming the next door neighbor, morbid destiny, talking about the ghost of a man in their house, talking about spells that the witch next door is doing, talking about Martian landings.
Well, they said she's going to skip a grade, they think.
Yeah. And then David Michael's like, here's a goldfish.
I love Karen. She's
my favorite character in the book.
I read all of her Little Sister book series as well. They were so
I need to read those. That's what I was just telling Hawa earlier. I've got to read those now because she was legit my favorite character.
Yeah.
Her and Mimi. I like Mimi a lot. And spoilers again.
Yeah.
Oh
my God.
No. When that like wrecked me when I was a kid.
Can you just say what it is? Because
Mimi dies. And
she has really bad dementia before she dies.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a very upsetting everything, the whole arc, because she does get established as this like really wonderful, kind presence in Claudia's life, but the other girls as well. And it's like, oh, yeah, that was a tough one when I was a kid, especially because I was definitely like, Claudia was my favorite. And
that book also gave me a lot of food poisoning anxiety that I haven't overcome because Claudia spends a lot of time angsting over like whether or not Mimi took the food out of the fridge at the right time and defrosted it appropriately, and whether or not they'll all get salmonella.
Yeah.
Speaking of anxiety, I was anxious in the beginning of the book when, in the beginning of Kristy's big day, when they were giving all the instructions for all the 50 million thousand kids, and she's like, yeah, these are the pills for this, and these are the pills for that, and this one has this allergy. And I honestly thought that was like going to be some kind of like foreshadowing to like someone eating something they shouldn't have, or like
they put a whole lot on these girls.
12-year-olds.
I was thinking, at that age, I certainly babysat. There were adults though that were more involved.
Babysitting.
Like these folks really did just
what were they doing before
straight
a
up
week?
ditch their kids for a week to make some hors d'oeuvres.
And they not only ditched them, but they made like more complicated tasks. Like take 6 of them to the barber when they're all really anxious about it.
Because the barber's only open from 9 to 5. Like y'all couldn't take off like an hour or two early to take your kids to the barbershop.
And also I felt like it was really stressful for Kristy's grandmother, who's like the chauffeur for 14 kids.
What was it called? The pink clinker?
Yes. Like this poor woman, she probably just wanted to make some like centerpieces or something. And they're like, no, drive them here. No, cram all these people into your car and get them to the barbershop, the movies.
Not only was she the chauffeur and the flower arranger, but she had to make
she
two
made
dresses
the dresses
in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
No big deal. And apparently knit a sweater for a handmade item for each of the 14 children.
No, that grandma was killing it. She was just getting everything done. I'm like, why is it taking like all of these 10 adults to do just
what were they doing?
Handcrafted appetizers are now endless.
What were they doing? That's what I want to know.
Doing appetizers.
Yeah. There were a lot of like plot points that were set up that were not actually realized. Like also at the very beginning of the book, Stacy was like, oh, what usually happens at the end of the year? And Marian's like, oh, it's the spring fling. And I was like, oh my God, are we going to have a dance and then a wedding? And no, they just like moved on.
You get like one paragraph about it. It's like, I went with so-and-so. Claudia went with this guy. So,
I don't even remember it.
And then the other two didn't go because their parents, just the two whose parents were dating, they just ended up having like a family event or something.
Yeah, because Kristy goes with a boy that she was like, I like him 50%, and the other 50%, he's annoying. And that was like all we got from the dance.
It went by so fast I didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
It was like literally 2 paragraphs in the beginning of that chapter.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit. We've gone kind of deep into the plot.
I'm sorry.
Which is fine. It's great. There is a lot to talk about there, but I do want to kind of back up a little bit and talk about this as like a feminist work. So obviously, like our main characters are all girls. And I think we've already talked that we feel like they're pretty well developed. And I'm curious, kind of, as we look at it through a feminist lens, do we feel like this is a feminist book? Are they feminist characters?
I mean, I would say heck yeah. And I think, at least in the research I did on Anne Martin, she identifies as a feminist and really attributed that to her time at Smith, which is an all-women's school, and developed her ideas about education and about how you teach children from her time there. And I think she really made that come through in the books. Like I really liked how Kristy's mom is depicted. It's like yeah, you got the short end of the stick with your deadbeat ex-husband, but she's making it work. She has got a good job. She is trusted by her company to be sent to Europe to do these like high profile things. She's doing a great job by her 4 kids. She doesn't need a man, but she found a good one. I like that. And I think especially for the 80s, that was a pretty progressive take on what a 40-year-old woman would look like. And I think that's cool. And then it's girls that form a conglomerate and like work very well in terms of setting up sort of ground rules for their business and like business practices. It's profitable for all of them, but it also like distributes the labor very equitably. Like, I think it's a really good sort of example of like the girls doing this thing, they're running it better than the adults would, right? The wedding's kind of a mess, but like they're getting it done, you know? I think that's progressive. I think that's inherently very feminist. And even like Claudia and Stacy being a little bit more into boys than like Marianne and Kristy are, it's just an acknowledgement of where they are with their like maturity level and hormones. It's not ever like viewed as like one is better or one is less good. It's just this very frank sort of,
these are all different ways of being.
they're a little bit more mature and they're already like into thinking about boys a bit more. And Kristy and Marianne just aren't there yet. And that's all fine. Everyone's still friends and everybody is, you know, a valid individual and it's not judged at all.
Yeah, like it's a mention, like boys are a mention in the book, like a very, like we joked about how the dance was like a very small paragraph, but like it was just a small mention in the book and it didn't really take away from any of like the other plot points in the story, nor did it like, you know, feel like it was running their lives, which I mean, I feel like is also kind of very realistic because considering that they're like 12. So, you know, some girls are boy crazy and some are just like, yeah.
Because it's like no one is the same. Everybody has their own individuality, especially like Claudia. It's like she stood out. She wasn't within like the norm of what you would see. And then also even just like take their business, for example. They were very supportive of each other. They, you know, empowered each other. They kind of like talked about things, talked things out, and it was like more unified.
Yeah, I think there's the fight that they have at the end of the first book where Kristy has called out Stacy for not telling them the truth about her situation. And they have this kind of like reckoning at their next club meeting. And I feel like that really stood out to me as a moment of feminism, because in a lesser book or in another book, they would all be like, I messed up and I'm a bad friend. And I feel like it'd be a very like peaceful resolution. But in that conversation, like Kristy still was like, I probably shouldn't have approached it the way I did, but I don't like being lied to. And that's something that's a core value for me. So like, I'm sorry that you were offended, but like, I still don't wish you hadn't done that. And Stacy took ownership for her behavior as well. And I feel like it was a lot more like nuanced of a conversation. And I think that is very feminist to me to like say, we're all coming at this with our own values and ideas. And this is how we like find harmony in our shared friendship.
Yeah. I think another thing in there, and it was kind of subtle, but I think I'm correctly interpreting it. Kristy gets in trouble early in the book with her teacher because she's so excited to be done with class for the day, which is totally understandable. Like,
she has no decorum.
And he makes her, he makes her go home and like write a punishment essay on decorum. And to me, that felt very targeted at her being a girl. He was upset that she jumped up and had energy and was...
I feel like decorum is something that's expected of young ladies.
Exactly. Like she wasn't ladylike enough for his taste. So he like punished her for it. But the way that the book presents it, I'm pretty sure we were supposed to feel like that was a really bullshit thing to do by the teacher, right? Like we're not supposed to think like, oh, Kristy should have had more decorum. We're supposed to think like, yeah, adults get it wrong. And the adult men in these books get it wrong a lot. Like,
well, because Kristy tells her mom about it. Her mom's like, well, whatever, do your essay.
Exactly. Like, her essay was too short. And she's like, Mom, do you think this is okay? Because I used like the end as part of my word count.
With
and
her
mom's like, yeah, whatever. Because she thinks it's a ridiculous thing, too, that she's getting punished for being excited that the school day's over. She didn't even do anything that rude. She just got up from her seat with excitement. I'm
he
like,
was he not happy to be off?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And the air conditioner was broken or something too. So it's like, obviously it's not a pleasant place to be.
And she explained that to him and he still was just like, no, you're going to write this essay and learn your place. She didn't learn her place at all. She went and started a business.
How's that for decorum?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, she was super rude to Mr. Watson like a couple hours later.
Yeah, she was pretty awful to him.
That was pretty bad, yeah.
And that there was really no reason for that because he is presented as very nice and thoughtful and approaches the kids well, I think.
But something I like about that, though, is that when she knows that her behavior can get into trouble, and she has a very clear understanding of when it is and is not appropriate. So like the jumping up at the end of the day because you're excited to go home, that was not an appropriate time to scold her. But like telling Watson he's a bad dad and like storming off, like that was not appropriate. And she knew that, and she apologized. She wrote her mom a very nice apology letter.
She did. And I thought mom accepted that really well.
Yeah.
Like there was no lingering where she was still upset with her after the fact. It was just okay, we're done. It's fine. I love you too.
Yeah.
Which I thought was also a really nicely drawn bit of parenting.
Yeah. And, Watson didn't seem like he took any like super offense to it, which I mean, he's the adult in the situation. So I'm glad that it was like kind of presented that way. Like, it's almost kind of like, okay, it's okay to have your emotions and your feelings and, just take some time to think about it. And then, let's move on.
I do want to jump back to talk about their business practices because I think for 12-year-olds, they do a really good job, but they never address the fact that Claudia's been taking jobs on the side when the phone rings outside of club hours, and that bothered me.
When the money started rolling in, I got out of control. I guess you could just say that I kind of became a money holic.
And also, all the girls are starting some side hustles where they develop relationships with people, and I feel like they need to get some solidarity going and address that. And also, like, they never talked about, like, are they all charging the same rate?
Yeah, I think probably not because it would be different for different numbers of kids,
But
right?
they could have the same, like, math, the same pricing structure.
Like a per head kind of thing.
Yeah. The only other thing I think I had that we wanted to talk about, and this kind of goes back to the feminism conversation, is like Kristy as a tomboy and the tomboy archetype.
I actually didn't necessarily pick up on that. The only thing that I picked up on that kind of hinted it towards that she was a tomboy, maybe because I read it kind of fast, was that, the whole thing was like, yeah, the bridesmaid's dress is different than her style, but she was super excited about it. And I was like, honestly, same.
Yeah, I think it comes out a lot more in her like overall character arc, the way that they develop the character in later books. And in some of the books that are not focused on Kristy, it comes out a little bit more.
I do think that the cool thing about her is that she's tomboyish without being like a full-fledged trope. Like she generally wears more like athletic clothes, but she still can get excited about like dressing up or getting some of those like adult girl privileges of the heels or whatever.
The heels, that was so cute.
Yeah, she was really
very low,
heels.
tasteful heel. And I think that's cool too. Again, like adds to the kind of layering of her. She's not just like, oh, ew, I only wear boy clothes. I'm a tomboy. I do sports. It's just more like I lean more masculine, but that doesn't mean I don't have many sides to myself.
Yeah, I think actually all of the girls have pretty nuanced depictions of what their interests are or what they gravitate towards or like their personality traits because they feel fully formed.
Well, I think the journal entries of their babysitting stories helped with that.
That was so cute.
You get their first person. And I think that's what makes these books so strong too, is that it is a first person story and it changes the perspective based on who the book is like the main character. Because when it's third person, even the best written story, you feel a remove. And I think you get to really relate to each of the different personalities by being in their head.
One of the articles that I read when I was doing some research on the author was actually a male reader of the series when he was young, saying that these books and the series really taught him most of what he understood about fiction point of view. How do you draw a character? What a like long character arc looked like. And it's very easy in serialized books to not do any of that. You know? Like it's very easy to go cookie cutter and where it's like, okay, here's the character. You always get the same front matter to establish the character so somebody can pick it up at any point. Here's the plot element. Here's the resolution. And that's like all you get.
Yeah.
But this is doing something more sophisticated than that.
Well, I was going to say the front matter part of it was so artfully done. Like you're still catching up on what's happened before, like well into the book, because she gives you the information when you need it and doesn't try to just slam it all into the first couple pages.
No, there's no info dump at the beginning.
And I would add that it was interesting to me that they made this book into a Netflix series just because the way that Netflix does like their characters, where you have like different characters that a lot of people can, fall in love with and follow and relate to. It's almost like the book is a little bit before its time in a sense, because a lot of the shows that's on Netflix and series, they kind of have that same structure of, oh, this is a character that I identify with. And it was like very seamless bringing that series to Netflix.
Yeah, very well done by that team and Anne.
Well, yeah, and you see some of those devices. I mean, if you consider this as a series rather than as a lot of separate books, you see some of those devices in much more sophisticated storytelling, like Jessica's saying. Game of Thrones is basically doing this by chapter, right? You're inverting the point of view. So rather than standalone books, you're changing who the narrator is for that chunk of things. And so what are you learning by seeing the same events through everyone's lenses over time? Yeah, that's pretty complex for a book that's like mostly read by like 8-year-olds, I think.
Yeah. Also, just to add that like she's very funny writing. Like I was genuinely amused when they're doing the fake wedding before the real wedding, and the kid that they've gotten to be the rabbi or the MC for the wedding. And he says, "We are gathered here today to join these two guys in holy moly." And then he says, "Karen, do you promise to love your husband and help him out and not hog the television? And David Michael, do you promise to love your wife and help her out and show her how to ride a 2-wheeler?" And they do.
Yeah, there are a lot of funny little lines in it. Like,
and then when they run off because they have to kiss.
Yeah, they freak out and leave. The whole argument about the Martian landing, I thought was really well written, where you have the older characters freaking out because the little ones are scaring other children to death with their whole like conspiracy theory about like, oh, well, when the aliens come, we're going to be screwed. Like, you better have a gun. You better, they're going to come and pew you. And
you got somewhere to hide because that motel's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
Fran on the playground was very upset. Also, what is this? They just randomly have someone working at the playground in case kids come by and like...
Yeah, she was like the playground monitor. It was very odd.
After when school was out,
also, how can you be someone whose main job is to supervise and create activities for children who can't handle children who are like causing trouble? Like the first sign of trouble, you're like, actually, Karen can never come back to that again. Like, what? Same thing with, I was really mad about the movies too. When they get kicked out of the movie, I'm like,
all of them out.
This is a children's movie and you're mad that children are being children at the movie.
It's Mary Poppins and they throw them out of the theater for laughing.
And it's almost over. Like, just let them finish the movie.
Ridiculous.
There was some nice detail in
they
that.
They didn't get any warning?
Sticky Junior Mint's hand was like, oh, I feel that. Like, I've been there.
As someone who's worked at a movie theater before, the Junior Mint's mention was very, like, key. Like,
you smelled that?
I smelled that.
Yeah.
I saw the white box with the green words, Junior Mints.
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot of good candy references throughout. Like, all the candy is name brand.
Snickers.
That is like such a visceral detail from these books, is Claudia's little like hiding places of her
junk food stash.
That like came back to me instantly while I was reading it.
And they're sure to mention that Stacy can't have any.
Yeah.
Diabetes.
And then who was it? Dawn that likes healthy food?
Yeah. Which was nice. It was good for Stacy to have an ally. It wasn't just her turning down the candy by herself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any stray thoughts?
Did we talk about the covers?
Oh,
no.
Let's talk about the covers. So just for some context, these books have, even though they stopped writing them in 2000, continued on and actually have had a revival in recent years. They re-released a lot of them with new covers, but also have been turning them into graphic novels, which are currently coming out. Most of them are drawn by Raina Telgemeier, who like could just draw her backyard and kids would buy it and like rip it to shreds and love it so much. So it's having a really interesting revival right now. And so we noticed an interesting evolution as we were looking over past covers.
There's been a lot of changes. So the earliest covers, so the ones originally done in the 80s, have a very, I keep calling it a Judy Blume look. It's these sort of realistic looking tableaus of the girls in various scenes. They then updated those, and the like 90s releases often use the same images, but they like, I don't know, zhuzhed up the borders and stuff and made it look very like
a lot of denim.
Saved by the Belly or something.
I love that.
And the current covers that have come out in the post-Netflix series re-release. I feel like they're really trying to mimic the graphic novel covers, even though this is not the same author, not the same illustrator that did this cover art. These are not Telgemeier drawings, but they definitely seem to be trying to evoke similar vibes. One of the things that we had kind of discussed was whether the cover art is trending younger with these newer versions and that they're like kind of targeting a different age range. Certainly, I read these when I was more in the like 8-year-old age. I mean, I think my friend and I were in like 4th grade when we started our jewelry business. That was based off of these. So,
because these girls are like 12, right?
Yeah. But like, I don't, at least in my childhood, the people that were reading Babysitter's Club were not middle schoolers. Like it was definitely more a middle grades book, not a middle school book. And I feel like the current covers definitely seem to be targeting that. Like it's a cartoon, right? The old covers seem to be trying to evoke Judy Blume, which maybe is targeting a slightly higher age. So I'm kind of curious about if the cover design, like what the marketing strategy was with that.
One thing that you had mentioned when we talked about it before we got on the mics was that 12-year-olds nowadays are reading more like YA type stuff, which I don't think YA was really as fleshed out back then as it is now. So it makes sense that they may have been gearing these towards them back then, but now they realize that maybe the 8-year-old range was reading them. So let's just go all out and get these cute cartoon covers that'll really draw them in. Because I don't know if those older covers would have necessarily drawn in the age range that really does end up reading them.
Well, it's something we've talked about before, where usually for a children's book, the age of the character is the age of the target audience. And so it may be that when they initially published them, they were thinking 12. And then as we've talked about, they just kind of skew younger by design.
Yeah.
I happen to have my copy, which has these cute little like activity books in the back. And so I had filled it out when I read it, which I read them in no particular order because I just read them as I was able to buy them at thrift stores. So this was not necessarily the first I read, but according to this, I was 7 years old. It was June 2001, my sweet, sweet pre 9/11 self.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's pretty true that historically, I mean, Heather, you and I were that age at different times and we both kind of read them then. So I think these do tend to skew younger than intended.
And like Scholastic lists it with 8 to 12 as the range, but I wouldn't now recommend this to a 12-year-old. Yeah. Not that there's anything wrong with the book. I just feel like for most 12-year-olds, this is going to feel a little juvenile to them.
Yeah. I think what I liked about these books, I like, Kelsey, that you mentioned that you didn't necessarily read them in order, is that like even if you just picked up one and you weren't necessarily started from the beginning, they do kind of give okay, well, this is who this is and this is who this is. And so like they give like a quick recap without feeling like, okay, I already know all this. So I thought that was cute.
Yeah.
Since you didn't read them before, Jessica and Kelsey and I did read them more serially, I think. How was it for you skipping? Because we did skip, four in between books.
See, for me, it kind of felt like I know you were saying that you felt like the characters, you know, even though these were their central, the ones who weren't, it wasn't their central book, you felt like you got to know a bit more about them. I didn't necessarily feel that way. And maybe it's because I didn't have like any other context of like what I remembered them as. But I think maybe more so in the Kristy's Great Idea, we got to see more about their characters as opposed to Kristy's Big Day, because it really did just feel like Kristy's Great Idea felt like, okay, this is the introduction to the whole series. Like, this is where the idea comes from. And these are the girls that are making up the club. Kristy's Big Day really just did feel like it was about Kristy, her mom's wedding, and all these gaggle of kids, I used your word, all these gaggle of kids that pull up to her mom's house for the week. And you do get to see a little bit of them here and there when they go break off into their like respective groups and stuff like that. But I mean, also, these books aren't that long, so it's not like I was really expecting a lot. And I see why every girl kind of gets their own book to kind of like flesh that out more.
Well, you know what I think is interesting, I know that you listened to the cassette tape version of Kristy's Big Idea?
I listened to the cassette tape for Kristy's, Great Idea. Yeah, sorry.
Great Idea.
Yeah, no.
Great Idea, Big Day.
I don't know if you were going to say Big Day.
I blended. Because that one is all, they converted the story to be all dialogue. They got rid of like
Interesting.
and the dialogue I think is really true to form, and they have voice actors, which I think adds some layers that you don't get in the book, but then obviously you lose some of the context and it kind of goes through the story more quickly. But what's interesting about that too is that the graphic novel version is all dialogue as well. And I think from when I was just looking at it, it seems pretty similar to the audiobook version. And so now it makes me wonder what kids who read just the graphic novels might like lose or interpret differently if they're not getting the kind of full inner monologue of Kristy's head when she's doing those things.
Well, but it's funny because the great idea was the one where I like the audiobook, because I guess the audiobook that I listened to that you sent was like it was like a link to the cassette. So like from 1978 or whatever. Very authentic. I thought that was really cool because like everybody had like a different voice actor, and even though you kind of missed on some of her little internal things, like I don't know, just the way some things were said, it just kind of felt like like you were watching it almost. I don't know.
Well, I do wonder then too about the book design, because one thing that I felt like I lost between, I read a hard copy of book 1 and then I read an ebook of Kristy's Big Day. And in book 1, I thought it was really great and very like informative about the characters, that their entries are in their own handwriting.
Yeah, I had no idea.
And their script is all different. I don't know. To me, it tells you a lot about Stacy that she puts hearts over all of her eyes.
Right? That's super cute.
It tells you a lot that like Marianne has the most like grown up looking handwriting, and that Kristy's is very like rigid like her. You know, it's straight up and down, and that wasn't present in the ebook. And I felt like I lost a lot from that. So then, you know, also with the covers, it's like I am curious about just sort of these general book design choices that they're making and what they're trying to convey with those things. And like you would lose the handwriting in an audio for sure.
Also, my issue with Kristy's Big Day cover, if that's supposed to be Karen on the front, isn't her dress supposed to be yellow also?
Yeah, they were
their
both
dresses
yellow.
supposed to be yellow?
Yeah, they were supposed to match.
Yes, but
they
she
did
has
not
on pink.
want salmon.
She didn't want exactly.
No, very anti-salmon.
Salmon. What's that? What's salmon? A fish? Ew. My other one thing that I noticed that they don't have in these books that Kelsey, I noticed your version, I think from the 90s had, was like the stuff in the back that you mentioned. Like, I mean, I guess that's not as much of a thing in books now, but I thought it was kind of cute that they had the thing where you could fill it out and be like when did I read this book and where did I read it and stuff like that.
No, that was great. And like Kelsey is another person that was always getting used books from used bookstores and thrift stores and stuff as a kid. It was always such a like gold mine find if you got one where someone hadn't filled out the stuff in the back already.
I know.
Like, oh, I got a good one. Felt more like your book.
Yeah, there's a lot of good back matter in here. Actually, something that's interesting too is it has a list of just Kristy's books and what number it is too. So if you just love Kristy, it says read all the books about Kristy in the Babysitter's Club series. It also mentions the mysteries, which I just want to throw out. There's one, I forget which mystery it is. I want to say it's Marianne has a mystery that scared the crap out of me. I have never been so afraid as I was reading this book. They were very well done.
Was it Marianne in the library mystery?
I think so.
Halloween episode.
Claudia and the Phantom Phone Calls was also kind of scary, although that was in the regular
just
series.
The first Claudia book. Yeah.
Do you remember what exactly it was that freaked you out?
Oh, I don't remember. I just remember. I mean, I've always been a wimp, so there's that.
Marianne and the Haunted Bookstore. Marianne's spending a lot of time with like
a lot of book
ghosts
mysteries.
and book places.
I don't know. I'll have to go back and find it. Well, maybe we'll have to do a special episode where we read a mystery.
Yeah.
Scare ourselves.
Oh, Abby and the Mystery Baby. That sounds really scandalous.
I'm also seeing their summer vacation one, which I always thought was like always my dream is to get hired as a nanny and go on someone's beach trip with them. I thought that sounded really cool. Just to mention while we're talking about books, I told everyone before we started recording, but when I was, we mentioned in the author bio that Anne M. Martin won a Newbery honor for her book, A Corner of the Universe, which I read as a kid, and I won a copy of it in 2004 for getting 171.2 accelerated reader points, which I know because they wrote it inside the book. And I've had this on my signed bookshelf forever because it was signed by my librarian. And then today when I went to grab it, I found out it's also signed by Anne M. Martin, and I had no idea. So I have, for 19 years, owned a signed copy of A Corner of the Universe. Highly recommend that book. Well, I have not read it since 2004, so maybe I don't recommend it. But
it was good at the time.
It won a Newbery Medal and or Newbery Honor, and it made me cry a lot, and I read it multiple times when I was a kid. So I feel like that's a good sign.
This book made me cry.
Yeah.
Each episode, we are heading into the library and talking to you. Well, not you, but people like you, right here in the stacks. Today, we want to know, have you ever tried to start a business when you were in grade school or middle school?
I tried to make a lemonade stand that also sold gelatis. So I didn't actually get it off the ground. None of my friends wanted to help me.
I'm in business with Henry. That fool over there. We sold hot cocoa. How much did we make? 162? 150.
Oh, y'all made bank.
Yeah, but then we had to close it down because some incident happened.
Wait, what was the incident?
I don't think he wants me to tell you. Because it was very bad. He got in trouble.
Oh.
His mom doesn't want him to do it anymore.
I have tried making a job. Me and my brother were selling hats. We made $120 a day when we were selling it. And then we just got bored of it because not that much people were coming.
What kind of hats were they?
Knitted hats.
Oh, that's cool. Did you make them or did you buy them and then flip them?
No, our grandma made it.
That's pretty cool.
Yes.
Family business.
Yes.
I made lemonade. I made around $50. Each day I tried to make 10. I only did it for 5 days because it was kind of boring. But yeah, I still did. Yeah, it was all made.
Hi. I worked on a hot cocoa business with Henry too. And I didn't sell hot cocoa. I told them what to buy for I was a treasurer. Okay. And I told them what to buy to get sales and stuff.
This is very organized. So you guys had someone doing production, someone doing accounting. Were there other jobs?
Oh, yeah. Tristan was the planner. He planned when and where we would go.
So the CEO, if you will?
No, Henry was the CEO because it was all at his house.
Henry was the CEO?
Yeah, it was all at his house.
All right.
Yeah, I actually have with my brothers. We were making hats, making $150 a day, I guess. Yeah, we live on a busy street, and there were just a lot of cars and a lot of people that walk by, and it was very cold. Yeah, our grandmother hand knitted them.
I'm Henry. I was the CEO of my hot cocoa company. I hired people to sell hot cocoa and organize events, and I made $150 in 2 weeks.
So I've heard there was an incident.
Yeah, I got in trouble with my parents, and they said I couldn't do it anymore. I don't really want to disclose what happened. They know what happened.
Do you have any future plans to recover from the incident?
Maybe if my parents let me open up again. Mm-hmm. I'll have to talk to them. I have to beg.
Hey, y'all. So for this part of the episode, we're going to do a little quiz. Shout out to Girls Life for this quiz. So the quiz that we're going to do today is, which member of the Babysitters Club are you?
Hi, we're the Babysitters Club.
So for the first question, it asks, it's your turn to choose the Friday night activity. You suggest hitting the bleachers to cheer on the home team, a low-key evening watching your favorite rom-coms, painting your own pottery together at the local studio, shopping, duh. Nothing beats browsing the racks with your girls, grabbing matcha lattes, and checking out an up-and-coming indie band.
I don't think I would get matcha latte.
I don't either, but I mean...
But I would go see a band.
I knew you were going to say that.
That's what I would go with as well, but I would try a different
I'm not going to get a matcha
drink.
latte at 8 p.m. That's setting me up for a bad night.
We have Malox and estrogen.
Though honestly, I guess when I was maybe not 12, but when I was a freshman, I probably got a latte when I went.
Oh, I would
somewhere.
get a frappuccino.
Yeah, because I thought
chip.
it was I don't know, sophisticated or something.
I think for me, I'd probably pick painting your own pottery together at the local studio, just because to me, it's the closest thing to I guess a paint and sip, which I'm always trying to get people to do. So I'm gonna go with that.
Okay, Claudia.
Also, anybody ever remember the place called? There was a place in
Color Me Mine.
Color Me Mine. Yes, that's what I was gonna say. Color Me Mine. I've been there twice.
Oh wait, question: is this supposed to be us now or us at 12?
That's a good question.
I guess we could say. I mean, if you want to know which member of the Babysitters Club you are now, then I guess you would be answering now.
Okay,
I'm doing now.
I'll do now too. Then
I feel like I kind of picked now too, and I also selected the painting your own pottery together at the local studio.
Nice.
Let's go sometime, girl.
That was my second choice.
Field trip.
Add it to the podcast tour.
Absolutely. Your friends always come to you for the honest truth. You tell it like it is. Advice. You're an amazed listener. DIY inspo. You're a Pinterest pro. Style tips. You know every trend. Recipes. Your smoothies are delish. I love reading these.
Wow.
I would definitely say advice. Like usually my friends, they'll ask me for advice. And then afterwards, they're like, I feel so much better, Jessica.
I was going to say advice too, but I've gotten a lot of feedback recently that I seem to be someone who's very honest and values honesty. So I think it might actually be the first one. And I've been lying to myself.
Yeah, I feel like mine is a combination of those as well. Like I think people always come to me for advice because I tell the honest truth.
Right.
They definitely go hand in hand.
Huh. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the honest truth just because I do feel like people come to me for advice sometimes, but
I was going to say style tips for you.
Mm-hmm. Style tips for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Y'all are funny. No. I'd probably, no. The honest truth. Just because, like, I don't think I'm a great listener. Like, sometimes people, like, when people come to me for, like, advice, I have to be like, okay, so do you really want somebody to listen? Or, like, do you want me to tell you how I feel? And I had to learn to be that type of person.
That's a good line, though.
Yeah.
I would be like, so you're not going like what I'm about to have to say.
Yeah. Are you here for a solution or are you here to vent?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll go with honest truth too.
But thanks, Kelsey. When you and your squad are at a party, you decide what time you all get there and what time you all leave. You're in charge. Follow wherever they go. Being alone at a party equals your worst nightmare. Hope your crush notices you. You didn't spend so much time picking out your outfit for nothing. Get everyone on the dance floor. Stat. Or introduce your girls to some of your other friends. You know pretty much everyone.
It really depends on the kind of party. If it's a wedding, I get everyone on the dance floor.
Yeah.
But any other kind of party, I follow wherever they go.
Same.
Yeah. My friends and I don't really go to parties anymore.
Yeah.
We just are like, we'll do something together. Like,
Yeah.
we're not going to someone else's thing.
That's why my first thought was wedding.
Right. If it's a wedding, like, we're going to dance.
Or if it's like someone's like
show.
milestone birthday or something. But even then, usually I know most of the people at those type of things.
Yeah.
I pick the decide what time you get there and what time you leave. Not necessarily because I'm always in charge, but the last party I went to, I was more of the organizer. So I was like the transportation. So I was like, hey, we're getting here at this time and some people have to work. So let's see what time are we going to leave.
I love knowing what time we're planning to leave before I get there. So I know how much time I have to vibe and enjoy and just be out.
Right.
If we haven't planned an exit time, I at least need to know our exit strategy. Like, how do we decide?
Like, do I say something specific to you? Are we going to go after they cut the cake? Like,
are we Irish goodbying this? Dance floor, I guess.
Ooh, Heather got moves?
Yeah. I mean, because again, with Kelsey, like, if I'm actually going to a party, now it's probably a wedding.
Yeah.
I feel that. For your BFF's birthday, you get her a picture frame with your favorite selfie, the perfect planner to get organized, homemade friendship bracelets.
Yes.
A pretty palette from Sephora, or a new yoga mat and tank. Tank?
Tank top.
Oh, haha, duh.
Just a simple tank.
It's a fish tank. That David Michael bought.
I was thinking like a tank, like a weapon, like a car.
I was like, why do those two go hand in hand?
It's just a little tank to roll over your yoga mat.
Mine is probably a picture frame with your favorite selfie, because I feel like at some point I've gotten like my friends some kind of variation of like either like, oh, we took this picture together and I got it like animated for us, or we took a selfie and I made it into a photo book or something. So
I mean, I always get someone something they like, not something
right.
That just made me sound so vain.
Here's a portrait of me. Just what you wanted.
That wasn't in response to you, the question. Oh, I'm going to say the perfect planner, though, because like often I will get someone a book that I think they'd like.
Yeah.
So that's the closest to that, I guess.
I don't know what to say here.
These options also.
My best friend is a guy. So like honestly,
gotta pick the friendship
I would
bracelets.
probably get him the palette from Sephora just as a joke, because he doesn't want any of this stuff.
That's an expensive joke.
I'm disappointed that you're not saying the bracelets.
You just gotta go with a cheap brand during the sales.
I'm disappointed that you're not going with the bracelets because you know you had your whole business based. But this is you now,
That's
not
true.
you
No,
then.
that's true. And actually, maybe I should go with that because it wasn't homemade, but I did at one point get somebody like a paracord bracelet that's like for emergencies if you're camping. So, okay, homemade friendship bracelets it is.
And then I would go with the pretty palette from Sephora because my best friend is a makeup artist. So I was like,
nice.
Oh, yeah, that was easy for you.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older, I've gotten really into frame photos of myself. Well, not of myself, but
the truth comes out.
People in my life. I feel like as I started like settling into my home more, I started being more into photos. So I feel that.
You and your friend had an argument over the weekend. What's your next move? You meet at her locker first thing Monday morning to talk. You're not leaving until it's settled. Send her a text with a simple sorry and tear face emoji. Make her a cute apology card with a nice handwritten note inside. Crack a joke to break the tension, laugh about it, and hug it out. Just forget about it and move on. No use bringing it up again. For me, I feel like I'm the kind of person that probably just try to crack a joke to break the tension, laugh about it, and hug it out. But also at the same time, I don't like when things aren't discussed, depending on how bad the argument was. So sometimes the cracking the joke will be like, okay, we cool. But also sometimes we may have to talk about it. But I'm going to pick the crack the joke because I'm not a handwritten note person. And that's the closest.
I feel like it depends on whose fault the argument is too.
That as well.
Like, because if it was definitely me, then I need to apologize. But if it was them and I'm just kind of over it now, like then cracking the joke is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I think the locker thing is just not really relatable because we
don't have lockers.
Right, we don't have lockers.
We do technically have lockers at some of the branches, but like nobody hangs out at the lockers.
Right. When I was in school, we didn't really use our lockers there either.
Really?
Yeah, no. When I was in high school, we were assigned lockers at the beginning of the school year, and then we had to bring our own locks, and we never really had enough time in between classes to kind of use it. So instead, you had the people who never used their lockers at all, and then you had people who had multiple lockers around the school using lockers near all their classes.
That sounds like real estate.
No, for real.
I said meet at her locker first thing Monday morning to talk because I do not like to leave things hanging, especially if someone has said something to me. We're going to talk about it. So I will not be leaving until it's settled.
I definitely feel like to just forget about it and move on definitely wouldn't work just because I feel like it's going to be hard to pick back up where you left off if it's something like an elephant in the room. So I went with the make a cute apology card with a nice handwritten note inside. And that kind of reminded me of like my best friend, like the last time we got into it, talked about it, but the card kind of helped solidify things and help us move on in a better way.
Did you say yours already, Heather?
Yeah, I went with crack a joke.
Oh, yeah, you did say that. I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to click for results. Okay, so it says, you're Claudia. Artsy and outgoing, you definitely have an eye for design and you totally own it. Like Claudia, not only are you a crafting queen, but you're a problem-solving pro, aka you can handle anything. And your knack for nixing nuances can make you a better bestie, too. The next time one of your friends is struggling, offer to brainstorm solutions with them, then come up with a plan of action to tackle their trouble. Your creativity plus killer confidence equals BFF goals.
I was also Claudia.
Me too.
Dang.
Me too.
Wait a second.
That's weird because we all picked different questions.
Answer the same.
I'm going to try to get a different answer.
Claudia's the only.
Maybe it's only one answer.
All roads lead to Claudia. Maybe it's just supposed to like be an inoffensive quiz because they think everyone wants to be Claudia.
I will say, like, I do want to be Claudia.
All of us wanted to be Claudia when I was a kid and we read these.
Take this quiz
Claudia
again.
was goals.
I'm taking it again.
I'm just going to go with what my second
Keep
backup
quizzing.
answers would have been real quick and just like...
I'm trying to get Stacy.
I wasn't expecting those
Claudia
results.
again. I think Claudia's the only
Claudia.
It's the default.
I love that for us.
Each episode, we ask whether our book passes the Bechdel test. The Bechdel test asks whether a work features two female characters who talk to each other about something that doesn't involve men or boys. Does it pass?
Absolutely. And I was trying to keep from mentioning when we talked about, like, is this a feminist work earlier? Because honestly, the mention of boys in this book is very minimal. And I kind of like that. You know, like like it's just like, okay, went to the dance, blah, blah, whatever. Okay, so here's what's really going on in our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, they're talking about their business.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate passing of the Bechdel test. That's all they talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's it for this episode of These Books Made Me. Join us next time when we'll discuss a book about a search for a missing father. If you think you know which book we're tackling next, drop us a tweet. We're at PGCMLS on Twitter and hashtag These Books Made Me. You can also send us your questions at thesebooksmademe@pgcmls.info. For historical deep dives and read-alikes, check out our blog, which is linked in the episode notes.
Yay!
We've been doing this podcast for 3 seasons and no one's ever emailed us.